Prosecution for criminal violations. Hey, how is that decision made? How is it decided whether the case goes forward, doesn't go forward? Well, it takes us to this week's case. It involves a real man, Michael Ray Hinson. Michael Ray lived in North Carolina. He ran into some financial difficulties and unfortunately he was evicted from his apartment. Well, the police showed up a few days later after the eviction just to see what was going on, make sure there wasn't anything going on in the apartment or anybody being endangered. And lo and behold, they found that Michael Ray had abandoned a pet when he left the apartment. He left the pet there by himself. Yes, he abandoned a fish called an Oscar fish. And as a result of this, because the fish was living in deplorable conditions, hadn't been fed for a good number of days, well, Michael Ray was charged with animal cruelty. Charged under a statute in North Carolina that provides that you should not engage in inhumane activity regarding any mammals, reptiles, birds, or amphibians. Well, the case was turned over to the DA's office. DA was a guy by the name of Ben David. And Ben David said he looked at this and after some consideration, some investigation, he said, you know what? I am not going to prosecute. Ben David said, just not going to prosecute on this. And the reason he wasn't going to prosecute is he said, when you take a hard look at the statute, it just provides that there shall not be inhumane treatment against reptiles, amphibians, birds, or mammals other than human beings. And a fish is excluded from this. As a result, he, the DA, decided, I will not engage in prosecution of this. And the case was dropped. Okay. The fish, by the way, went off to a place called a fish house, which was not a place where fish are cut up and eaten, but no, it went to a fish house that takes care of fish. It's a pet store. So what do we learn from this case? What do we learn from this case? What we learn from this case are a couple of things, but what we most importantly learn is how a case is prosecuted, how a criminal case is prosecuted. There are several steps along the way. First of all, you have to have an investigating officer, an officer who makes an arrest. He could be making an arrest for an illegal turn, he could be making an arrest for having some kind of a contraband, he could make an arrest for any number of things, but that arrest is based upon a preliminary investigation or an observation. Then the case is sent to the district attorney's office, and at the district attorney's office it's decided whether or not to prosecute this alleged violation. And believe it or not, an awful lot of district attorney's offices choose not to prosecute every case that is brought to them. A number of reasons for this. One, they have finite resources, they can't prosecute everything. And the other reason is that frankly it may be a difficult case, and therefore they choose not to move forward on it because the evidence really doesn't support prosecution. After the DA decides whether to go forward on a prosecution, and if the DA decides to go forward on a prosecution, then there is a preliminary hearing. And at the preliminary hearing, the judge has an opportunity to hear the evidence. And the evidence is just basically the initial evidence on the case. If the judge comes away and says, you know what, I don't find there is sufficient evidence here to really warrant going forward, the case will be dismissed at a preliminary hearing. Won't go forward any further. If, however, the judge finds there is sufficient evidence to warrant going forward, then in fact charges are brought in the form of moving forward to trial. And eventually it would go to an actual criminal trial. The point of all of this is there are all of these sequential steps along the way before a case actually gets to a courtroom. And because there are all of these steps along the way, everyone gets to be heard who is charged with a crime at each individual step. And it may well stop just with the investigating officer who has an explanation that makes sense as to why somebody made a left turn illegally and chooses not even to write a ticket. Okay, hey, bringing this case or bringing cases every week so you understand how the law works. I'm David Allen.